Vibrant Moving Expo with Janie Rezner. And she's an amazing woman who's really been holding the energy of the mother. She has an amazing radio station where she interviews women, the wisdom of women, every week, once a month. She makes an amazing music instruments that are profound. I've heard them last year. Beyond this, so you're in for a beautiful treat with a woman of wisdom. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm very happy to be here and grateful to be here and be part of this truly wonderful event and to be able to bring the mother into it. This is my sculpture, she, blessing us all. Indeed. There are handouts, I hope you have one, with references for the information that I'll be citing in my talk, and I'll give more information out at the end of the talk. I will be playing a triple-chambered ocarina. This is an instrument I make from clay that plays 3 tones at once. Generally, when I speak, I have my synthesizer, so I'm playing background music under my words. That couldn't happen today. So you'll have to imagine that there is music playing. Awakening to the Mother. My thesis is that once upon a time we lived in peace and harmony on Mother Earth, in gratitude for the gift of life. Although that time has been erased from our conscious memory and our most history books, it did exist. We see the desperate state of our world today. How did we get here? Where does violence come from? Exploring these questions, I propose that we can dare to reclaim our birthright of peace on earth and find our way back into the wisdom of the mother. I heard a Black activist elder the other day eloquently speak of the importance of holding the suffering and abused peoples and creatures of the earth always in the center of your world vision. As we move toward new and old ways to heal our earth, it is important that we be aware that much suffering is going on at this very moment. This suffering must be acknowledged. Think, how would we feel if the shoe were on the other foot? I believe change is happening here and there and will finally come together in a grand culmination, making us realize that an extraordinary wisdom has brought us together. A wisdom beyond all that we can fathom. A wisdom that continues to expand before our eyes and hearts. My name is Janie Rezner. I also write and paint under the Indian name Oaxaca, which means Yellow Banks, and is the name of a little Illinois town nestled on the banks of the Mississippi, where my mother and her mother before her for 4 generations grew up. I've been singing all of my life, inspired by listening to my mother's beautiful alto voice. My mother, Zelda, who was 40 when I was born, was extraordinarily talented and capable and beautiful. Everything she touched was made beautiful by her hand. My dad, Jay, was a farmer, and I walked and rode the tractor as a child beside my gentle and silent dad, a dad who never said a mean thing to me, who never scolded me. We farmed 160 acres on the same land that his father and his father before him for 4 generations farmed. I would have been a 5th generation farmer if I'd stayed on the land. After graduating from Monmouth College, majoring in music, I married and raised my 3 children in Davenport, Iowa, at a time when neither the words relationship nor sexual abuse existed, and where much was suffered, especially by my children. After 46 years in the Midwest, I moved to Berkeley, California, and received a master's degree in clinical psychology in 1983 from John F. Kennedy University. I was searching for healing for my children and myself, and expecting to be a healer in the world. Instead, I began a profound spiritual journey, initiated by the heart-wrenching separation from a man I had come to deeply love, Ed Jackson, a man I recognized as my soulmate. The loss of the mother, the sacred feminine, crushed by the patriarchal domination of the maternal spirit, a spirit that once filled the world with love and compassion, and the subsequent devastating abuse of our planet Earth and all her inhabitants was powerfully revealed to me through that crack in the cosmic egg. Art in many forms emerged from that painful opening, and my journey continues. My life is devoted to heralding the return of the great ancestress from the depths of each of our souls into awakening consciousness. I share my journey in the hopes that other women and men may not only be encouraged in your own awakening, but emboldened to take a stand and say, no more, and mean it. I call on the grandmothers to step forth and claim our rightful place as the keepers of wisdom by virtue of our life experience. We live in a world gone awry, a violence-ridden world, a world where all its creatures, great and small, along with the air and water and soil, are poisoned and dying, where greed, violence, and perversion reign. We find ourselves at the logical conclusion of patriarchy, the suffocation of life on earth. Underneath war and all other forms of violence lies a single cause, the absence of the sacred feminine, exemplified by the denigration of the mother and her love, the denial of the wisdom of the grandmother. I've been thinking a lot about the continuation of life on Earth, worrying about it, actually. Haven't you? I saw the documentary, The Sea Change, in which they disclose the increasing acidification of the ocean. This rise in CO2 is impairing marine animals' ability to build protective shells, without which they will die and are dying.
the building blocks of the feeding chain in the ocean are in critical trouble. Additionally, there's a huge floating island, I'm sure you've heard of this, twice the size of Texas, made of discarded plastic, ingested by and killing birds and precious sea creatures. In the U.S., we discard 2 million water bottles every, how often do you think? Every day? Every 8 hours? Every 5 minutes. Seas of water bottles. And the Navy wants to have full-out war games, bombs, torpedoes, mines, sonar, in our oceans, right here, just off the coast of Mendocino and Humboldt counties, and Oregon, and Idaho, to name a few of the many places around the world where this obscenity is rapidly expanding. Here, where one of the few abundant feeding grounds in the world, where sea creatures come attracted by the nutrients brought up by the upwelling of the ocean. This is where the Navy wants to conduct war games for 5 years, killing an estimated 11 million sea creatures, including whales and dolphins, seals, sharks, seabirds, poisoning our already very stressed oceans with depleted uranium, red and white phosphorus, to name a few ingredients in their toxic soup, contaminating air, water, and soil, starting soon. Their detailed, horrifying document, along with a petition to stop Navy warfare test program, can be found at www.californiaskywatch.com. californiaskywatch.com. Check out also oceanprotection.org. oceanprotection.org. This is very sobering, for they are doing this all over the world. A brave woman from our community went to Washington to speak with as many Congress people as she could. The thing she heard over and over again was, "You can't control the Navy. They do what they want to do. They don't have to observe environmental laws. After all, this is about terrorism. We can poison and destroy life on Earth, all in the service of terrorism." We begin to see who the terrorists really are. This is the new catchword in patriarchy, giving power-hungry men bent on controlling the world a free hand to do anything. I recently watched a video by Dr. Gabriel Cousens in which he reported that we are in for some difficult times ahead. He stated that we are in severe imbalance with the planet. It is clear that life simply has no meaning in this patriarchal world. The earth and its creatures can be poisoned, torn apart, bombed, mountaintops blown off, contaminated with depleted uranium and a myriad of other poisons designed by their crazed minds, and it is just okay with these folks. Our food supply, laced with harmful and addictive additives and pesticides, fumes from gasoline, our clothing, almost every item that surrounds us in daily life, from shampoos to sheets, plastic refrigerator dishes, water bottles, IV hospital bags, have been drenched in or emit poisonous chemicals, and each one of us carries a high load of them. We are surrounded by electronic devices that deliver another type of wounding to our already overloaded immune systems. We are dropping dead from cancers of all types and other diseases. Almost 30,000 children starve daily, and their mothers with them. American children suffer in poverty. Oh well. Global hunger is on a terrifying rise. Food riots rocked India, Indonesia, Haiti, and other countries last year. Lack of water in India is a deadly issue, and in other countries as well. And there is another whole level of violence toward women and their children. Woman, mother, earth, dark, life are all part of the same paradigm, and give a patriarchal man the shivers. Anything connected with woman is contaminated and to be hated and feared, or at the very least scorned. And heaven forbid should a feisty woman appear on the scene. The violence we see in some men, not all, is not due to levels of testosterone. We've lived for at least 45,000 years without violence. Little boy babies' hearts are filled with the same love as little girl babies. So what happened? Why are women so feared and hated by some, not all, men? I have an answer. If you were running a world culture purposefully maintained by violence, fear, power over, and greed, you wouldn't want anyone to come along and suggest that loving each other and sharing would be a better way to go, would you? Of course not. So, that heart-centered world of the mother, of kindness and love and protection, natural feelings for any mammal, I might add, must be made bad. The little boy is shamed for needing his mother. Anguished soldiers are taunted by their superiors for needing help. The male child is shamed every moment in his young adult life should his vulnerabilities peek out among the guys. What a mama's boy. Oh, look at the crybaby, crying like a girl. Being like a girl is very bad. A common Jewish daily prayer was, "Thank you, God, for not making me a woman." The young boy must deny his need for his own mother. He must cover his heart. He can't allow himself to be nurtured for fear of being shamed and of being hurt. And since he has internalized the shaming, he will feel ashamed himself for having vulnerable feelings, not realizing that his feelings of need are natural and appropriate. Think about the rough and heartless environment of so many of our children. And so the little boy learns to hide his deeper heartfelt feelings, including his outrage at his abusive treatment, and for his own preservation to stop feeling. The rage doesn't go away, however, but since it can't be expressed to his abusers, eventually it is vented on those who are considered lesser than and weaker, like women, gays, and blacks, anyone perceived to be different. And when you don't feel your own feelings, you don't feel other people's feelings, and then you can do anything. There aren't many loving feelings in this patriarchal world, are there? Our world has become horrifyingly violent and militarized. All we need to do is read the news or see a movie. The early church fathers purposefully depicted women as evil in order to maintain their domination. Keeping women repressed is the cornerstone of fundamentalist dominator systems, says Rianne Eisler. The churchmen of long ago worked very hard to make love and our natural sexuality wrong, rather than allow it to continue to be the fountain of great joy and passion between people who deeply love each other, which is how it was in the thousands of years before patriarchy. Then, making love was a sacred act. It is estimated that at least 9 million women and men, but mostly women, were horrifically tortured and burned over 3 centuries in the Middle Ages. There were villages in Europe completely devoid of women. No mothers, no sisters, no grandmothers, no aunts, no women. My God. And there are many men in the world today who harbor those same sociopathic tendencies. It hasn't gone away. Witness the millions of rapes accompanied by torture and massacres perpetrated on huge numbers of women and children and men. Rape, a weapon of war. Shame. 1 million children across Latin America have been entrapped by child prostitution and pornography. In many cases, the children are offered to wealthy businessmen and politicians. 2 million children worldwide are enslaved into prostitution in a market that is worth billions of dollars. The femicide in Juarez, Mexico continues, and along Mexico's borders with Guatemala, over 200,000 migrant women and children, underage girls, are sexually assaulted with impunity each year, with absolutely no Mexican law enforcement response whatsoever. Many of them are enslaved and sold to brothels around the world. www.libertadlatina.org. Mexican President Felipe Calderón and conservative allies in the church have declared that women were themselves to blame because they were immodest women who wear short skirts. Serial killers working as long-haul lorry drivers have murdered at least 500 women along the highways of America, the FBI reports. And this is the short list of atrocities committed against women and their children. 1 out of 4 women has been raped. 1 of 3 children has been sexually abused. And the horrific multi-billion-dollar pornography industry showing violent sexual torture of women and children, sometimes even to death, grows ever larger. Who watches this stuff? Unfortunately, when psychopaths rule the day, they keep the psychopathic behavior going, for they abuse their children and other people's children and anybody else they can get their hands on. The statement from the Bible, the sins of the father visited upon the sons, is absolutely true. Are we aware of how many children are abused sexually, physically, emotionally? Willis Harman writes in his book, Global Mind Change, real progress can only come as people begin to awaken from the social trance that is in vital part produced by what we are today beginning to recognize as traditions of child abuse. This abuse leaves us with a world citizenry of neurotic, fearful humans, easily addicted, easily brainwashed and manipulated, with an enraged male species given to assault, violence, sadism, and war. Rian Eisler, cultural historian, eminent social scientist, attorney, and tireless worker at age 78, is one of our wise elders. Dr. Eisler is author of the groundbreaking book, The Chalice and the Blade, with its model of dominator versus partnership relationships, where she presents her cultural transformation theory. She is truly one of the world changers among us. Rian writes in The Power of Partnership that our beliefs about what is or is not valuable are largely unconscious assumptions we inherited from earlier times, and the devaluing of traits and activities stereotypically associated with women is a hidden system of valuations that is integral to domination theories systems. We think of the little boy being shamed for being like a girl. I believe most men disregard women to some degree on an almost unconscious basis. And as as women living in this culture, we certainly devalue ourselves. How could it be otherwise? We are swimming in a sea of patriarchal brainwashing. The mother is still within, however, no matter what. Barbara G. Walker, author of The Crone, writes, the next phase of revelation must pass through men's rediscovery of the mother archetype, which lies deep within the unconscious of every woman-born human being. We all begin life in our mother's womb. She is our creator. In Dark Mother, African Origins and Godmothers, Dr. Lucia Chiovola Birnbaum states, and she's 82, I might add, and is a professor at California Institute of Integral Studies, And I'm 76, so tracing our history from 100,000 years ago, when peaceful modern humans first appeared in Africa, until the cultural shift into a patriarchal model about 5,000 years ago, harmony between humans and animals characterized ancient Africa, as did harmony between men and women, a contentment visible in many depictions in cave paintings, rock engravings, and other art of embracing couples. Lucia writes, I find the Dark Mother's values, justice with compassion, equality and transformation, in everyday and celebratory rituals of the world's subaltern cultures. And I suggest that the images and values are in the submerged memories of everyone. We started out living in harmony and in a world of abundance rather than in scarcity. All matrix societies practice the gift economy. Check out Genevieve Vaughn's books, Forgiving, a Feminist Critique of Exchange, and Dr. Barbara Alice Mann's book, Iroquois and Indian, the Gantowesis, the Wise Elders. We didn't use money or barter. We shared with other clans, and they with us. The concept of exchange and the idea that who had the most was better than simply didn't exist. The focus was on the well-being of those around us, rather than this egoist world we now inhabit, which must change if we are to survive. More from Lucia. The harmony of ancient mother-centered civilizations is shown that in Paleolithic Africa there was no division between sacred and profane, no division of self and the other. The mother and her nurture of all life were one. The concept of the other seems to have emerged in Europe with invasions of Indo-European speakers after 43,000 BCE, before the Common Era. Africa, south of the Sahara, where we emerged, contains the world's richest rock art. Red ochre, a symbol of the mother, signifying blood of childbirth and menstruation, along with the sign of the pubic V, which has been found on all continents, carried by Africans as they migrated out of Africa, is the predominant color of the cave art in that region, with about 300 walls painted with 2,700 figures. Figures dancing, singing, playing musical instruments, engaging in initiation rituals with body decorations and masks, characterize the art of the entire heterogeneous African continent. Their ancient art suggests that they venerated their ancestors, considered animals and all life sacred, and that they lived without violence. Ancient Africa, abounding with fantastic features, evokes contemporary surrealist art, notably that of Marc Chagall. Paintings of animals dated 30,000 BCE are sketched in red ochre, charcoal, and hematite. Stunning in their grace and beauty, art historians consider that the artistic level of these ancient cave paintings has never since been equaled. El Lucicaviolus Silvora, I'll refer to him after this as Lucia, major world geneticist, and Emmanuel Anati, archaeologist, have confirmed Maria Gimbutas's finding that the civilization of old Europe before 4000 BCE was harmonious, that beliefs evident in cave and cliff arts circled a woman as the progenitor of life and metaphor of the fecundity of the earth, and that prehistoric peoples lived cooperatively without wars, fortress, or slavery. According to Gimbutas's theory, confirmed by Luca, after 4000 BCE, violent warriors from the Eurasian steppes overtook these peaceful, mother-centered civilizations. These Indo-European speakers, called Kurgans after their burial mounds, are also known as Aryans. They snuffed out our ancient past, and we forget that once we lived in a world that honored the mother and the gift of life. However, the Bible does speak to that world. When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone cites many such references made regarding the Great Mother, always unflattering, of course. One particular damning remark in the Bible goes something like, referring to those evil pagans, and they worship women. Dr. Angeline Capra, in her essay, She is Everywhere and Always Has Been, writes, the divine generative force, that which brings forth life, illustrates an understanding of the world as a place that nurtures life and the interconnectedness of all things. This concept of sacred female generative energy is firmly established within our historical Judaic and Christian theological traditions. Although the evidence for this is widespread and can be traced back 50,000 years, it has largely been ignored or denied in the relatively recent process of reimagining divinity as exclusively male. In fact, the process of setting male deities over female deities as a source of generativity appears to have begun only about 4,000 years ago, with the appearance of male creator deities in Egypt and Sumer. About that same time, coming out of the polytheism of the Sumerian Mesopotamian region, the Hebrew patriarchs developed their monotheistic concept of the deity Yahweh, and identification with this image of the divine has been sustained to the present within Judaism. Almost 1,300 years later, that is, 2,700 years ago, the Greek Olympian pantheon emerged with Zeus and other male deities placed in a superior position to that of the earlier Gaia, Hera, and other archaic female deities. And during the past 1700 years, the Western Christological perspective was solidified and has gained significant dominance. These Yahweh, Olympian, and Christ-centric worldviews are indeed recent when compared to evidence of female deities that go back continuously for 50,000 years or more. Our contemporary culture looks back mainly to the era of classical Greece, only 2,500 years ago, or when we stretch our imaginations as far back as the era of the Hebrew patriarchs, 4,000 years ago. Mainstream contemporary Eurocentric culture has been reluctant to acknowledge our connection to Mesopotamia or to Africa, in spite of the evidence that corroborates these connections. Iconographic evidence of female deity can be traced back to the Upper Paleolithic era, 50,000 BCE. The historic record presents abundant representations of human concepts of divinity expressed through nature images, such as sea, earth, and vegetation images. Animal images, such as fish, birds, and snakes. And human female images. A characteristic which commonly connects these ancient, diverse images is generativity, the ability to manifest or bring forth life. In contrast, it is only during a relatively short period, approximately 4,000 years, that dominant Western culture has focused its attention on and invested with superior status the concept of an exclusively male, anthropomorphized, attributing human characteristics to a non-human being, deity. My point is not the superiority of female images, but rather their enduring significance for 46,000 years, until the relatively late collapse of that ancient understanding of generative power as located in nature and expressed as sacred female, into the more limiting image of sacred male. In the process, the nature-centered locus of generativity was further constricted into a human-centered concept of creativity. Dr. Camper continues, because we are a text-oriented culture, we tend to regard the time before writing as prehistory, calling it primitive. We give greater value and weight to the written record, despite the fact that our written record was often dictated by the winners in any struggle of competing worldviews, and usually is partial at best. The selection of the birth of Jesus to represent the year 1 as the beginning of counted time is at the very least arbitrary and Christian-centric. It privileges and establishes as normative the Western Christian worldview and history over all cultures from all times and all geographic regions. Angeline then includes an alternative dating system by Merlin Stone, who suggests that it begin with the development of agriculture, a time that is already accepted as the beginning of the Neolithic era. In this system, the year 8001 BCE becomes the year 1 ADA, after the development of agriculture. And the year 204 of the Christian calendar becomes the year 10,004 of a calendar with a longer view of history. This acknowledgement of a more substantial history provides us with a way to rethink our human story and reclaim the significance of those more ancient historical pieces. It also invites us to become more aware of the distorted perception we hold of a past that so privileges only the last 2,000 years of our history. Indeed, using this system, our date today would be 10,009 ADA. What a different feeling it gives me the moment I envision that longer view that includes more of our history. Hooray! We have something besides war in our past. We see the representation of divine generative energy as female from the early Paleolithic era through the Neolithic era into the Bronze Age, and despite the rise of patriarchy and its redefinitions of divinity and authority, into the present. This feels like such an important piece to the puzzle we are putting together. I believe we all know in our deepest heart that a land of peace and love is how it's supposed to be. We came in peacefully and treasured our time here. It was a time without money or a clock, a time when we deeply felt our connection to the sacred earth. Rian Eisler writes, "It's not coincidental that prehistoric images of women's bodies, and even more specifically of women's sexuality, communicate to us a reverence for life and pleasure rather than an obsession with domination and pain. For the fact that sexuality was once associated with the sacred rather than with the sordid and obscene also did not happen in a vacuum. It evolved in societies where women and men had a more equal partnership, where the highest power in the universe was still seen as the power to give, nurture, and illuminate life, rather than the power to dominate and destroy." Lesline de la Madre, author of Midwifing Death, writes, "When the goddess is left out, what is taking place is a denial of our ancestors. I feel in my bones that until our spiritual heritage is really seen for what it is, that the original fact of spirit from the earliest times was female, not relating to genitals, as many people think, but primally female, as the moving and the emanating force in the universe that brings forth life. Until that happens, we are not quite awake to the truth of who we really are. Awakening to the mother within is an organic process that is being called into being within each of us from the deepest regions of our deepest selves. It is a process of awakening to our own divinity and to the divinity of this precious earth. We see our beautiful place, a gift from the Mother, and we are grateful for it, and with profound conviction rise up to protect and heal it. We reawaken to our place, our destiny on earth." Thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I am going to be out at the speaker's table with my CDs. I have 2 CDs, Oquaka Speaks, The Words and Music of Mother God, and The Voice of the Mother. They're listed on there. And I also have interviews of the women that I have interviewed on my radio show. So many blessings to you all. Thank you.